Let's go over 10 chess tactics every beginner should know, and stick around for a bonus move at the end that I didn't even know existed until I lost to it in a real game. Strategic, tactical, calculated. This is 1e4 mate. Hey guys, welcome back to 1e4 mate. We're on episode 2 of our How to Play Chess series. If you missed the first video, make sure to go back and check it out. We covered check, checkmate, and stalemate. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss the rest of the series. And with that out of the way, let's get right into the very first tactic, the tempo. A tempo is when you develop a piece that attacks another piece, forcing that piece to move away. We have e4, e5, and we bring the queen out right away. And what happens when we bring our queen out to h5, we allow black to win what's called a tempo. So when black develops their knight to f6, it attacks the queen. So black essentially just got a free move. So it forces our queen to move away. And so when that happens, it's called a tempo. Moving into our second tactic, we can stay right here. When black attacks the queen, they also attack the pawn. So our second tactic is what's known as a fork, when one piece attacks two or more pieces at the same time. So that's what a fork is. Anytime any piece attacks two or more pieces at the same time. It's definitely something to be on the lookout for, especially as a beginner. They can be very tricky. And so what happens here, when the queen moves away and goes all the way back, black is able to capture a free pawn. All right, let's go into the third tactic, which is a pin. Let's develop through this game a little bit. And here is where we see the first time this tactic is used. In this position, black's bishop is attacking the knight, but if you look what's past the knight, you'll see the queen. So a pin is when you attack a smaller value piece, like a knight, that has a high value piece behind it, which would be the queen, therefore restricting the mobility of this knight. So there are two kinds of pins. Those where you can move out of it, it would just be a bad idea. And then there are those where you cannot. You are not legally allowed to move a piece that is pinned to your king, because then your king would be in check. So you can move this knight, but you're going to lose your queen. However, you cannot move this knight anywhere. It is not a legal move because it would put your king in check. So that is what a pin is. It is very restricting. It is a way to cramp down on your opponent's position, and there's not a lot you can do about it. Like, you can push this pawn, and black is either going to take and you can trade, or they're going to go back and you're still in it, and you really don't want to open up your king like this. So it's a really kind of tricky tactic, especially for beginners, to look out for, to do this to your opponent and to make sure your opponent doesn't do this to you. Our next tactic that we're covering today is a skewer. That is when you attack two pieces at once, similar to a fork, only instead of doing it both at the same time, you do it indirectly. So let me show you. We're going to develop the knight on f6. So we'll develop our bishop. Black will push that pawn. We're going to take here. Black pushes their pawn. And if you'll notice, if we're not paying attention, both of our pieces are lined up on each other. So if we're not paying attention, it'll be easy to fall into this trap, a skewer. You'll notice the queen is attacking the bishop. So if we go to move the bishop, we lose our knight, and vice versa. Up next, we have what's called a fianchetto. The fianchetto is when you develop your G pawn or B pawn, and on the next move, you put your bishop there. This is a great move if you want to try something different than just developing your knights and finding a square along here for your bishop. It switches it up. It's harder to be attacked because you've got this pawn controlling these squares, and you've just got a lot of defenses for your bishop, so it's not like it can be chased away easily, and it just controls this whole diagonal, and that's the longest diagonals on the board. So that is what a fianchetto is, and we're actually going to get to see that in practice with the next tactic, which is called a battery. Hey guys, what's up? We're about halfway through the video here. If you like this, make sure to go hit the like button, and for more content like this in the future, go hit subscribe. Let's get back into the video. So we're going to develop through this a little bit, and right here, we're already going to see it in practice. A battery is when you have two pieces that travel the same direction lined up together. So this with the queen is very powerful. And in a minute, I also line up another one. When we castle, it's not just for diagonals. Of course, if you put your queen lined up with your dark square bishop, you'd have a dark square battery. And what you also have here is a battery on the file. And you could even do something like, let's make some random moves. We're not gonna capture. You obviously wouldn't make that move in a real game, but you can even make batteries on a rank. Just a side note for making batteries on a rank, if you get both of your rooks later on towards the end game on the 7th rank for white, or if black is able to do it on the 2nd rank, it's extremely powerful because most of the time the king is castled back here and it's just cut off from the rest of the board. And that is what's known as pigs on the 7th or pigs on the 2nd. I don't know why, but it is. So this is what a battery is. And if we keep going to where you can see a checkmate. So that is what a fianchetto is, as well as a battery. So for number 7, we have what's called a hanging piece. I'm gonna go through this position here. And to start off, this is a very normal position. It's one that I've had hundreds of times. And right here is where we get to see, you'll see queen d7 is a blunder. So the knight that once had a pawn defending it and a queen defending it now has no defenders. So a hanging piece is a piece that black forgot about or white forgot about, which is why on the next move we're able to see that they just completely gave us a free piece. That's something to look out for in the openings, especially now. My bishop is hanging now that I've moved my queen away. So in the next couple moves, I'd be looking to drop it back here, and push this pawn. That way it has a better scope. Wind up on the king, something like that. So that's what a hanging piece is, and it can really be a game changer. Because what happens if you leave your queen hanging undefended? So for number 8, we have what is called a double check. Double checks are pretty cool. They're a little unique. So it happens when two pieces deliver a check to the king at the same time. So on this move, if we move this knight away, the king will be in check. And if we move it somewhere that puts the king in check by the knight, it'll be a double check. So we can take this pawn, and the king is in check by the queen and by the knight. So the only evasion for a double check is for the king to move. If you watched my check, checkmate, stalemate video, you remember that there's 3 ways to get out of a check. If you block, so if the queen went here, if the queen was the only one checking, or if the queen just captured the knight, if the knight was the only one checking. So you can't capture 2 pieces at the same time. Obviously, you only have 1 move, and you can't block a check from 2 pieces at the same time. This could also happen, like if you had a rook and a bishop lined up just right, you could move the bishop away and check. Also, a little fun fact, I thought it was really interesting when I finally learned, you cannot block a check from the knight. I thought that was pretty cool because knights can just jump over pieces. You would think it's kind of obvious, but it's just not something you really think about until you're told. And so a check from a knight can never be blocked. That's pretty cool. So that is what a double check is. The first one you get is really fun. It's really cool to finally be able to get it. And what's really fun is double checkmate. When you deliver a double check and it's checkmate. I've done it once or twice, and it's really cool. So that is double check. All right, and for number 9, we have what's called a discovered attack. So a discovered attack can be kind of complicated and hard to explain. So I'm going to get the position ready so that I can show you guys exactly what a discovered attack is. So in this position, we see that white fianchettoed their bishop, like we talked about earlier, very powerful. You can see this long diagonal, and at the end is this rook. So what a discovered attack is when you move a piece away. In this case, it would be this knight, and that has a bishop behind it. And when you move the knight, it discovers an attack, in this case, on the rook. They can wind up losing the rook. They can be pretty sneaky and definitely something to watch out for, to set up for your games and to be on the lookout for, to make sure your opponent doesn't do this to you. And for number 10, we have almost the same thing, only instead of a discovered attack, it's a discovered check. So let's go through this position here and get to where the check is and see if you guys can spot it. So here we have our bishop with our rook behind it. Our rook is lined up on the king. So we can essentially move this bishop anywhere, and it comes with check. And whatever this bishop is attacking, when this check happens, we can capture. So it's check. We move the bishop, but the rook checks the king, so the king has to do something about it. And when it moves out of the way, we can take their queen. For the purpose of this tactic, you can pretend that we took with the bishop because that's kind of the whole point of the discovered check. But I also noticed when I was setting this position up that the capture with the queen was checkmate, and I thought that was pretty cool. So that is what a discovered check is. That was the 10 chess tactics every beginner should know. And now it's time for the bonus move that I didn't even know was real. So the first time I saw this move, I was playing in a real game over the board against my brother-in-law. And so when he played this move, I just looked at him and said, "What are you doing? You can't do that." And he sat there and explained to me that it was a legal move, it was real. And so I looked it up. Is what he did allowed? And come to find out, it was a legal move. This move is a very unique and somewhat rare pawn move. This move is called en passant, which is French for in passing. So we have e4, e5, d4, e takes d4, and e5. So both of these pawns right now are in position to make this move. So what this move is when a black pawn is on the fourth rank or a white pawn is on the fifth rank is when this move is possible. So we'll see here that black plays its pawn 2 moves forward. Now, had black just played their pawn 1 move forward, white could capture. But this gives an unfair advantage to black because later on in the game, when all these pawns are going forward trying to promote at their opponent's back rank, if this pawn waits until this pawn is here, it can just go forward 2 moves and not be captured, which is why this move was created. So in this position, white can capture black's pawn as if it had only moved forward 1 move. Black's pawn will disappear off the board, and you see this little information card that chess.com has. En passant is a special pawn move by which a pawn captures another pawn that is advanced 2 squares. So that's what en passant is. So in this position, black has the opportunity to play en passant. But here's the catch. So here we see black does have the opportunity to play en passant. But let's say they don't, and they play something else. On black's next turn, it is no longer an option. So this is not something you can come back to later on in the game. Well, I didn't want to on that move, but now I do. It has to be on the very next move. So now the only option for this pawn is to just go forward like normal. So that wraps it up for the 10 tactics that every beginner should know, as well as our bonus move en passant. This is episode 2 in the series, How to Play Chess. If you missed the first episode, you can go to the playlist. I linked it in the description on check, checkmates, and stalemates. And stay tuned for future uploads. I plan on uploading about once every other day while we're doing this series. So stay tuned for the next video, which will come out in a couple days. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and share it with a friend who wants to learn more about chess. The next 6 videos in our series will be covering how each piece moves. So we'll be starting off with the pawn, and then we'll be going to the knight, bishop, rook, queen, and king. So to make sure you don't miss all that, go subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.